Bienvenida a esta segunda jornada del Congreso Internacional en Administración de Negocios Internacionales, Ciani 2022. Recordar de pronto la temática general que nos convoca esta vez, que es nuevas estrategias de recuperación y sostenibilidad corporativa. En nombre del comité organizador y en el mío personal, nuevamente es un honor estar aquí con ustedes. Saludamos especialmente esta mañana a la decana de nuestra Escuela de Administración y Negocios y directora de la facultad, doctora Gladys Mirella Valero Córdoba, y a uno de nuestros invitados especiales y conferencistas, el doctor Cristian Cifuentes, que muy amablemente aceptó la invitación de participar desde Australia. Para él un saludo muy especial de gratitud por haber aceptado nuestra invitación y por estar aquí presente. Queremos agradecer también el auspicio y el apoyo de aliados estratégicos del Ciani 2022, la Cámara de Comercio de Bucaramanga, el Global Plan Santander, el Virtual Institute de la Conferencia de las Naciones Unidas para el Comercio y Desarrollo, el Programa de Alto Impacto Académico de las Naciones Unidas, la Asociación Red Colombiana de Profesiones Internacionales, el Grupo de Investigación en Contextos para la Administración de Negocios Internacionales GRICANI y todos los integrantes y líderes del Semillero de Investigación en Gerencia Internacional SIG. El CIANI tiene como propósito general ser un espacio, perdón, el CIANI tiene como propósito general ser un espacio de reflexión, de análisis y de debate en torno a temas relacionados con la administración de negocios internacionales, a través del intercambio de experiencias y resultados de investigación, tanto nacionales como internacionales. Y los principales ejes temáticos de esta cuarta versión del CIANI, espérenme que mi computador me está, ya, perdón. Los ejes temáticos principales que nos han convocado hoy son las relaciones internacionales, las finanzas, la logística y la gerencia estratégica internacional, el mercadeo internacional y la responsabilidad social, crisis social y medio ambiente. Este año contamos con la presencia de conferencistas invitados de 7 diferentes países: Australia, Ecuador, Argentina, Perú, Bolivia, Estados Unidos. En total contamos con más de 720 participantes, 386 externos y 341 internos. En total son 64 ponencias y en total son 146 ponentes participando desde los países que ya mencioné, pero también desde México, desde Puerto Rico, desde España y desde Colombia. Entonces, como le dije ayer en la mañana, realmente hacemos parte de una red interconectada de intercambio de saberes, de opiniones, de experiencia, y eso es increíblemente valioso. Bien, antes de comenzar la primera conferencia de hoy por parte del doctor Cristian, cabe recordarles a todos los participantes consultar el programa detallado del evento que pueden encontrar en nuestro sitio web. Ahí van a poder ver los horarios de las diferentes conferencias y ponencias simultáneas, los autores de las ponencias, y ahí también van a poder encontrar enlaces de acceso a cada una de las jornadas del día de hoy. Una vez terminadas las conferencias de esta mañana, abriremos nuevamente 5 diferentes salas simultáneas para las ponencias que están categorizadas en gerencia, logística, relaciones internacionales, finanzas, responsabilidad social, mercadeo internacional e integral. Recuerden la línea de soporte para cualquier ayuda, cualquier duda que tengan: 324-654-8920. Muy bien. Para comenzar, entonces tendremos la conferencia denominada Impact of COVID-19 on Skilled Migration and Economies Reliant on International Students. En español podría ser Impacto del COVID-19 en la migración global, mano de obra emigrante y dependencia económica en estudiantes internacionales, a cargo del doctor Cristian Cifuentes, conferencista que originalmente es chileno, latinoamericano, pero que lleva más de 30 años residiendo en Australia. Cristian es abogado y docente residente en la ciudad de Adelaide, en el estado de Australia del Sur. Es practicante legal en la Corte Suprema de Australia del Sur y la Corte Alta de Australia, y su práctica legal se enfoca en derecho migratorio, derecho familiar, penal y comercial. Se ha desempeñado como docente en las escuelas de Derecho de la University of Adelaide y de la University of South Australia. Christian ha impartido clases en Derecho Internacional, Penal, Negligencia, Comercial y Jurisprudencia, entre otras ramas. En adición a su licenciatura en Derecho, Christian cuenta con una licenciatura en Estudios Internacionales y un magíster en Derecho Internacional. Cristian, gracias una vez más por aceptar nuestra invitación y bienvenido al Ciani 2022.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome all of you that are here today that got up really early in the morning to come and listen to my talk. I have been invited to present my talk in English, and I will do that. But it might
Excelente.
well be, thank you, it might well be that I say a few things in Spanish or maybe Spanglish, as it might be. I'd like to thank the University Pontificia Bolivariana for the invitation. It's a very nice and kind invitation. I'd like to thank the Dean Gladys Mireya Valero Cordova for the invitation, and also a very good friend of mine who I had the privilege to meet in Australia some 25 years ago, Professor Julio Ramirez. I also want to thank Andrés Acevedo and Jaime Sarmiento for the kind assistance we've been today in this conference. I won't say anything about me today because Andres has done a really good job. Yes, you want to say something, Andres?
Disculpa, Christian. Can you share your screen? You're not sharing your presentation. We forgot about that.
Is that it? Can you see it?
Yes, perfect. Yes, we see it now.
Okay.
Continue,
Thank you.
please.
So the theme or the topic of my presentation is the impact of COVID-19 on the skill migration economies reliant on international students. I won't say anything about me. Just suffice to say that I am a solicitor or a lawyer, and I work in South Australia. I completed all my education here in Australia. My areas of practice, as Andres said, is migration, criminal law, family law, and commercial migration. But I do have an interest, an academic interest in international law and therefore in migration, and particularly in the regime and the policy development around international workers and international students. The topic that I'm going to try to cover today is quite large, so I'll try to cover the topic in the 45 minutes that I've got. If any of you would like to ask me any questions throughout my presentation, please feel free. I'm more than happy to answer any questions throughout the presentation, but also we'll have some time at the end, 10-15 minutes for questions. So I'm going to start with the first slide. I'm going to give you a little bit of background. Obviously, global migration is something that we all know about, but I suppose that one of the things that we need to understand about global migration is that historically migration has been a consequence of geopolitical events, and those events, as you would know, that are the most critical events tend to be war or conflict, and that's what I put in my presentation. The two world wars, the First and Second World War. We also had the Cold War, regional conflict like Vietnam, the Balkan War, which is the ex or former Yugoslavia. Then we had Afghanistan, Venezuela, of which the Colombians are very aware of, and now more recently we've got the Ukraine. So geopolitical events have been the turning point in migration governance and policy because governments have had to adjust their migration policies in response to these geopolitical events. However, COVID has shifted, in my view, that geopolitical focus to something which is new to us, which is global health concerns. And in that sense, COVID, interestingly enough, in my view, has offered us an opportunity to reflect on our collective future at every level. And when I say collective future, I mean
Tenemos un micrófono abierto, por favor, apagamos micrófonos.
So to reflect on our collective future, I think that's been one of the consequences of COVID. In terms of international migration, we're talking about big numbers. Currently, the statistics from 2020 is that we've got about 281 million international migrants globally. And you can see that in 2019, that figure was at 272 million. Of that figure, we've got 135 million international female migrants, and that's a significant number. 146 million international male migrants, men, and we've got 169 million migrant workers that were recorded in 2019. Um, I also included in my slide the last section talking about missing migrants because there's a lot of movement and people do die when they're transiting from country to country, especially when they have been seeking the assistance of people that traffic other people or that do people smuggling, as we call it in Australia. Um,
Christian,
yes.
excuse me, I need to interrupt you. There's some problem with the presentation and we're not seeing the slides. Are you progressing in your slides?
I can share my slides again.
Yes, I
Should
think
I?
maybe just stop sharing the screen for a bit and then share it again to see if it fixes because we do want to see your slides and we're not seeing them. There we go. Now we got it.
Can you see it?
Yes. Now I can see
I
your screen.
okay, now I need to see. All right, which do you see the big screen or the little screen? Sorry.
No, I'm seeing the screen where you see four slides, four
Okay,
different
how about
slides.
now? Can you see the big screen now?
Yes, now we see it. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's all
You can
right.
continue
That's
now. Go
perfectly fine.
ahead.
Can you
All
see
right.
now?
Yes, it's working good. Thank you.
All right, no worries. So I was in this slide talking about the numbers of international
Yes,
migrants.
perfect. Great.
The next slide. Um, I mean, I think this is very interesting. You know that we've got 40% of the total of migrant workers, 66 million are women, so that's 40%, and 8.5 million of those women work in domestic settings, um, which is quite significant. Importantly, we can't talk about migration without talking about people who are displaced. And when we talk about displaced people, we're talking about refugees and asylum seekers and people that are displaced. At the moment, one of the biggest numbers of displaced people are people from the Ukraine and also people from Venezuela. Many Venezuelans are living in Colombia. I think the figures are around 1.8 million Venezuelans that are living in Colombia. But according to the UN, to the International Labour Organization, we've got about 26.4 million refugees globally in 2020. 4.1 who are asylum seekers, so they transiting from different countries, trying to find asylum. We've got 3.9 million Venezuelans who are displaced, and we've got also internally displaced people, and that figure is about 55 million people. The one figure that I don't have in my slide is the people from the Ukraine, and the figure from the Ukraine is about 4.5 Ukrainians that are currently living in different parts of Europe, and we also have some Ukrainians living here in Australia. Where are they going? Where is the movement of migrants? Generally, they tend to be concentrating in Europe. We've got from the 90s. I've got a graph here from the 90s to the 2020. So we've got some figures there, and you can see the increase of migrants, and they definitely concentrating in Europe. So in 2020, we had approximately 86.7 million migrants in Europe. Latin America, only 14.8 million migrants in terms of movement in Latin America. Now, talking about COVID, naturally, I think no one here or none of you would be uh, alien to the impact of COVID. COVID has had a big global shake. It's shake us all, and you can see that we've got a tremendous human toll of 6.5 million people that have died worldwide. Um, COVID has also had a severe impact on labor market. There's been extensive job losses and an incredible shortage of critical skills. We'll talk about its critical skills in a minute. In terms of economic loss, the estimates are that they amount to about 16 trillion uh, dollars in losses and due to the contraction of economic activity and particularly to the disruption of global supply chains, um, including in terms of disruption is disruption to essential services such as education, hospitality, tourism, anything to do with accommodation, healthcare. He has caused a lot of grief in that sense. Um, but we can't ignore also the impact on mental health and social dislocation, which long periods of isolation have caused on people. Only recently, I was reading an article on the impact of COVID on mental health in Australia and the increase of suicide in Australia due to COVID, people that have lost businesses, people that couldn't see relatives that were apart from relatives for a long time. Uh, the people that suffer the most, or the people that have suffered the most through COVID, are obviously the disadvantaged, the poor. We have to include migrant workers. Not all migrant workers have high level skills. The majority of migrant workers are people that are provided seasonal labor and they have low skill sets. Uh, and one of the things that it's important is that the impact of COVID on our perceptions of personal safety and collective well-being. I think that's been a major consequence of COVID, a greater awareness of our personal safety, but also of our global collective well-being. Um, there were some, I guess, from things that are bad, we can also rescue some positive things. And one of the things that you would probably agree with me is that COVID has revealed some interesting things about our society and the way we respond at a global level, domestic level. One of the things is that COVID revealed that 50% of the work activities that we undertake can be automated, right? And and we are moving towards that, gradually. It has motivated reform in terms of policy and governance to increase and develop innovation, digitization, automation, and non-standard forms of work. So we're talking about the era of working from home. I'm sure that many of you have had that experience already of having to work from home or doing something which is a combination of working from home and also working from your office or your workplace. Um, there's also been an increased development of artificial intelligence across sectors. So government uh, has been investing money, at least in Australia and developed countries. I'm sure that Colombia is not an exception, or Latin America. And there's been an investment in artificial intelligence in order to provide services across different sectors of society. COVID has also highlighted the need for skills in science and technology. Australia, it's very big in technology, and there's a lot of money being placed to attract students and international talent, and to encourage domestic students to undertake science and technology education. Importantly, through the impact on unemployment. Oh, sorry, unemployment. I mean, we've seen a lot of uh, people become unemployed through COVID, but this has provided an opportunity for other sectors of society that traditionally have not been used before to fill gaps, in services. So women and people with disabilities as well have uh, uh, been more engaged in trying to fill those gaps with employment. Uh, One of the things that COVID has caused in terms of developing new technologies and services online, uh, the automatization of your service and digitization, is that most of the global business is being conducted by small and medium-sized enterprises, and they have faced some significant challenges in trying to find the resources to implement some of these necessary changes in order to survive throughout the period of COVID. Uh, Obviously, there is nothing new. I'm not telling you anything new, but businesses have collapsed, and people have lost, their livelihood through the pandemic. One of the things that COVID did was to create a regime of restrictions on international travel, and I've got a slide here that you can see. Um, with the darkest of the colors, the dark blue shows that those countries that had total, absolute total closure of borders. So we've got Australia, for instance. Uh, I didn't even realize that Chile had complete closure, but there you go. Chile, Argentina, Bolivia, Uruguay, Canada, parts of the Middle East as well. Even Madagascar, which is next to Africa, they had total closure. And then you had bans on high risk regions. So countries like the United States, some countries on Europe were not allowing certain people from certain regions of the world to enter the country. But you can see in this map um, that it was mostly the developed world that had um, some very strong and stringent travel restrictions. I mean, that caused a massive upheaval, people not being able to travel, um, and people losing livelihoods, people getting stranded as well in the host countries. And this is a slide that gives you a bit of an idea of the travel restrictions. So we're talking about thousands and billions of people that were not allowed to travel. Um I'm gonna move to the next one. So I just wanted to give you some figures. Um, so we have permanent migration to countries members of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development uh, fell by 30%, through the period of COVID, those 2 years that we had COVID. Generally, working holiday migrants have been on the rise for the last 20 years, and then we had obviously a fall of 58%. And the working holiday migrant, it's vital as seasonal workers. Australia, in fact, depends a lot on working holiday migrants, especially for agriculture and fisheries. Um, Australia has needed to bring migrants from the islands. I'm talking from Papua New Guinea, from Tonga, the Pacific Islands, to work in harvest of sugarcane, mangoes, etc. throughout the pandemic, subject to international agreements. Um, there's been a massive issue with and challenges faced by the job recruitment sector to meet critical demand for people with skills and for labor, and uh, especially because countries like Australia, for instance, they impose very strict quarantine periods. So if you wanted to enter Australia, not only you had to work quarantine for 14 days, but you also had to pay for your own Medi hotel. That's what it used to be called. And that affected the ability of people to want to come to Australia. Many international students that needed to return to study to Australia decided not to come back because they couldn't afford having to stay in a Medi hotel. And that also happened not just internationally, but domestically. Australia is a federation, and we've got states, and each state has got a government, and each government had their own policies about the closure of borders. So Victoria, for instance, had complete closure for about 8 months, that people could not move and could not leave the state. So it was very difficult here. Um, Unfortunately for migrant workers and temporary visa holders, the situation with COVID is that they were placed at the bottom of the social ladder, right? They not only faced unemployment, but many of them lost their visa status. Many of them couldn't have access to health. They couldn't work, and therefore they couldn't pay for health insurance. And obviously, as temporary migrants, they don't have access to social security benefits. So there was a lot of crisis here with the transient or temporary migrants and also international students. And one of the things that occurred as well was a surge of anti-migrant sentiment and discrimination and xenophobia. This was quite stark and it was quite visible, particularly in Western countries where nationalist sentiment um, uh, proclaim or encourage governments to look after the domestic workers instead of the foreign workers that were stranded in the country. And I'm sure that this would have happened in, it doesn't matter if it's a developed country or it's a developing country. I think it happened across the countries that had international workers working in a temporary basis. Uh, just to give you an example, when in terms of uh, uh, unemployment and migrants that got stranded, we've got some really impressive figures. Just to give you an idea of the movement of international workers and how they contribute to the global economy. But during 2020, when this is the onset of the pandemic, towards the middle of 2020, the UN reported, the United Nations that is, reported that there were 1.5 million Sri Lankan migrants working overseas that were basically stranded in their host country without visas to exit the country. There were 870,000 undocumented Afghans working in Iran and Pakistan that returned to Afghanistan. 62,000 Ethiopian workers working in Saudi Arabia. 1.8 million Indian workers that were repatriated. Now, India uh, is the country that supplies the most international workers and foreign workers. But also, India supplies together with China, the majority of international students. The same was faced by international workers or migrant workers from Southeast Asia and East Africa, also from Latin America, who were facing uncertainty, economic disadvantage, lack of stable housing and healthcare. And most of these workers, the bulk of it, the majority of these workers are what we call low skill workers. So we're not talking about doctors or nurses or engineers or accountants, but we're talking about fruit pickers, people that are working in agriculture, people that are working in fisheries, people that are doing manual labor. Uh, Now, one of the issues with migrant workers is that as they became stranded in the host countries, and many of them lost their jobs and started to struggle financially, uh, they were prey to people smugglers. I'm not sure whether you've heard of people smugglers. I'm sure that you have. Uh, United States and Mexico has a history of people smuggling people that cross Rio Grande into the United States. And to give you an example, Australia also has an issue with people smugglers that sell passage from Indonesia through the islands in boats to the coast of Australia and people have to pay to come to Australia. Many of them have died, not many died, but have died trying to cross. It's a very perilous trip, and people take the risk. Um, well, there is another figure there between March 2020 and February 2021, some 2,669 people died in the Mediterranean Sea and Atlantic Ocean trying to reach Italy, Malta, and Greece, right? Um, but even after the borders opened, unemployed migrant workers were unable to move across borders due to the cost of COVID test certificate, due to not having the vaccination supplied to them. So it was a very difficult situation for migrant workers, and it is unfair that the world and the countries that rely on migrant workers do not have, some of them do not have proper policies and proper labor law based on rights that can protect people that in fact contribute so enormously to the economy. uh, Australia, for instance, and I know that United States and in Europe, countries rely on skilled migrants to fill positions in key sectors of the economy, and that has been one of the things about the consequences of COVID, um, with the increase in need for health. Australia was facing, for instance, a severe shortage of health workers, but not just health workers in hospital, but also health workers and care workers working with people of the third age, with elderly people, with vulnerable people, with children. And also we couldn't find manual labor to work in our hospitality industry, agricultural, forestry, and fishery sectors. Australia is an agricultural country, and we supply an immense amount of agricultural goods and vegetables and fruits worldwide. At some point, we didn't have anyone to pick bananas, to pick apples, to pick cherries. At some point, a kilo of banana costed $20, when before COVID, a kilo of bananas was costing $1.50. Avocados were costing $5 each. So we're talking about some severe economic problems, even in this country, which is quite wealthy. And you can see here also that Germany, the USA, Spain, and Italy, United Kingdom, and France uh, also rely on foreign labor to fill positions, whether it's in services or also agricultural, forestry, in those sectors. Now, how do we know that migrant workers are an important sector of the global economy? One of the ways, or one of the strategies that is used to measure the impact of migrant workers in the economy is by way of remittances. And for those of you who do not know what a remittance is when you send money back to your country, to your home country. That's called a remittance. We're talking about billions of dollars. As I say, in my slide here, in 2019, it was estimated that $714 billion was sent back in remittances from foreign workers, right? From foreign workers. That's 1% of the total global output. That's a significant amount of money, especially because that money is going to countries which are developing countries, and they tend to go to very modest families, and they indeed create a lifeline for those people. People are able to buy essential services, to buy food, to pay for accommodation, to send their children to school, etc. Uh, but interestingly enough, remittances did not fall drastically because of COVID, right? In 2020, it's estimated that they only fell to approximately 400 $540 billion. And the reason for that is that people that were overseas, whatever money they had, right, whatever money they had, they sent it back home, right? Because they knew that if they could stay in, I don't know, say Saudi Arabia or Qatar or in Europe, in Spain, in Germany, they could try to find some form of employment or some form of assistance. So whatever money they had, they sent it back. And that's why remittances did not collapse as it was forecast. Now, interestingly enough, the USA, and this is no secret, is the main source of remittances in Latin America, Mexico, Guatemala, Dominican Republic. Uh, and instead of falling during COVID, they actually grew by 6.5% because of the same phenomena that I was explaining before. People being very worried about what was going on back home and sending everything they had back home. Spain is the main source of remittances for Bolivia, Paraguay, Peru, and Ecuador, but this fell by 11% because if you recall, during the onset and the commencement of the pandemic, Spain was in a lot of trouble together with Italy. So the economy in Spain was collapsing, and that's why remittances fell by 11%. Um, I've got a graph here. India, once again, $83.1 billion in remittances. That's an incredible number. Then we've got the Chinese that are abroad. That's how much money they send home, 59.5 billion. Then we have the Mexicans, the Filipinos, Egypt, Pakistan, France, Bangladesh, Germany, and Nigeria. So we've got some very significant figures here in terms of how much money and foreign currency is going to activate the economies of developing countries. Uh, we can't talk about migration without talking about asylum seekers and refugees. I've got some figures here for you. Since the pandemic, asylum seekers in the developed world or developed countries fell by about 31%, and that's the sharpest drop since the end of the Balkan crisis or the war in the former Yugoslavia in 1990s. And then we've got in 2019 to 2020, more than two-thirds of all refugees under the UNHCR mandate came from just 5 countries, right? And then that's self-explanatory, from Syria, Venezuela, Afghanistan, South Sudan, and Myanmar. So we got big figures in terms of refugees. Um, Interestingly enough, very interestingly, in 2021, some 429,000 refugees returned to their countries of origin. Um, but in 2021, the UN estimated that there were 4.3 million people that were stateless and resided in 96 countries. So stateless means that you don't have a state, you don't have a passport, right? Um, I'm gonna move. I'm running out of time, so I'm just gonna try to rush a little bit. But if you look at the last point, this is very important. There are some 350,000 to 400,000 children that are born as refugees every year. I mean, I thought you would be interested to know that Colombia rates third in the countries that host refugees. The first country is Turkey with 3.8 million refugees. Then we have Poland with 2 million Ukrainian refugees recent. Then we have Colombia with approximately 1.8 million Venezuelans, right? Uganda with 1.5, Pakistan 1.5 million, and Germany 1.3 million refugees and asylum seekers. So that's where the main countries where asylum seekers are concentrating. We also have countries like Kenya, and other countries in Latin America, but those are the main countries. Now I'm going to move into international students. Now, international students uh, in the last 25 years have become what we call expert education, and it's a massive global business, right? If you look at the figures from 1970, there were a million or over a million students that were traveling and studying overseas. In 2016, that figure increased to 5.3 million, right? And in 2016, the contribution alone of international students, it was $300 billion to the global economy. So that's a significant movement of money. Obviously, with COVID, there was a sharp fall in enrollments of international students, and most of the countries that were hosting international students and rely on the international student economy felt the pain of having a shortfall in enrollments. And which countries are those? Those countries, we call them the Big Four, and they are Australia, Canada, the USA, and the United Kingdom. They referred as the Big Four. And I've got a slide here that shows you the percentage of the international students that they take, with Australia being at the top with 75% of the total global number of students that uh, decide to go and study overseas. We have also other countries. There's another about 100 countries that also offer international education. That's China, France, Germany, Japan, Malaysia, Spain, and Russia also attract a meaningful body or cohort of international students. Now, the interesting thing is that China and Russia actually provide much more lower tuition fees. So enrollments, it's cheaper to study in China or Russia than to go to the USA or Canada or Australia. And even, I don't, possibly you know this, but France and Germany also have many degrees that they offer with very low tuition fees, or sometimes for nothing, for zero. So uh, if you had, if you're considering maybe studying, Europe offers you very low tuition fees. With COVID, you can see the graph, the situation in 2019 in terms of international students. In 2020 and in 2021, you see a sharp decline, which really took a big fall in Australia and New Zealand, whereas in Canada and the United States and the United Kingdom, it started to climb very sharply in 2021. Australia is taking a long time to recover in terms of international students because we are very far. Now, international students, it's a big business, and also universities take this opportunity to cross-subsidize their research, and try to increment or increase their institutional status. Uh, International students also nourish or feed sectors of the domestic economy, uh, from essential services all the way to leisure and tourism. They also feel International students feel demand for unskilled and skilled labor, and also provide a good pool or number of highly skilled professionals after graduation. So we can say safely that there are economies that are very, very reliant on international students, Australia being one of them. Now, how much does an international student need to complete 1 year of education? It can range from $10,000 to $100,000. But generally, it's around $20,000 if you want to study in an English-speaking developed country like Australia. And the living costs, of course, can vary depending on the country that you go to. International students in Australia, the largest service export and the fourth largest export sector. In 2019, international education was worth 40.3 billion dollars to the Australian economy, and there were close to 450,000 international students enrolled in Australia. Well, there is actually now 450,000 students enrolled right now in Australia. Um, I'm going to go through this very quickly, but what this graph is showing you is basically the contribution that international students uh, provide to the economy. It's not just about tuitions and university, but it's also about economic activity, accommodation, food, services, transport, the cost of visas, contribution to tax revenue. If you work in Australia, you pay tax. When you go home, you get back some of the money that you have to pay to the government in tax and your superannuation, but also contributes to educational institutions, demanding uh, infrastructure. The universities in Australia have actually grown, structurally grown to accommodate international students. You also have revenue that is brought over to the country by family members that come to visit you. And in general terms, the whole economy benefits from international students. apart from the cultural exchange, which is very important as well. Uh, International students in Australia had a very difficult time. Australia lost about $20 billion in 2021 through the fall of international students. And the sector that was the hardest hit was what we call the ELICOS sector, which is the English language intensive courses for overseas students. So, for instance, many Colombians come here to study, and the first course that they do is an English course. That's what we call the ELICOS sector. Um, Now, I titled this slide "The Legendary Australian COVID Visa." It became legendary because it was a visa that the government of Australia implemented right after the closure of international borders. So the visa, this 408 visa, was provided to anyone who was running out of a visa but could not engage in a course of study because they had finished and they wanted to return, but they couldn't. So the government implemented this COVID visa, and I call it legendary because everyone was after a COVID visa. And right now we have thousands of people that are still holding one of these visas. But the Australian government needed to do that because it needed to supplement jobs, it needed people to work. And especially in those sectors that I put at the end of the slide, like healthcare, aged care, disability, childcare, hospitality, and tourism. Um, Now, how are universities recovering? What they doing? They realized that they were too reliant on countries. For instance, Australia is very reliant on the Chinese market, right? So what are they doing now? They're trying to cast their net, like when you fish, right, as wide as possible and trying to attract other markets because they were too reliant on specific markets like the Chinese and the Indian market. So the Australian government has developed new policies because they are aiming to educate 10 million students by 2030 to 2040. So that's a very ambitious plan. So there's a lot of money being put into education, and the Australian government is facilitating the provision of visas to come to Australia to study. Now, I think I've rushed a little bit because I don't want to take too much time, but I did want to make some concluding remarks. The things that we have learned and the things that COVID has highlighted. I think this is my personal opinion, and I hope that you agree with me. But I think one of the things that the consequences of COVID is that it has made us reflect on our collective future at every level, right? Uh, there has been a degree of social dislocation. People had to experience isolation and lockdowns, but it has also increased our awareness, our trust in each other, I think. And to think, that something invisible can bring the world down, which is a virus. And we're not talking about a war and guns and rockets. We're talking about something which is invisible that can bring whole countries down. But we also have learned that if we're going to have economic stimulus, if we're going to have economic recovery, that economic recovery has to be in concert or hand in hand with strong public health measures. We also have learned that we need to develop rights-based labor policies because it was very difficult for migrant workers. And I'm sure that in Australia, we had some sort of assistance for them. But in other countries, like Europe, some of these migrant workers that contribute enormously to those economies, they suffered the blunt of the COVID pandemic. It also caused us to rethink our definition of what is really an essential worker, right? Now we have a much greater awareness about our health, um, and we have redefined this concept of what is an essential worker. We've also been motivated to develop new structures for work, new systems to deliver services, particularly the provision of health and care for the most vulnerable members of society. And most importantly, we have been obliged or forced to think about the role of government, right, and institutions. People need to have faith in government and their institutions. And I think many people were very, very, very disappointed with the role of government and institutions throughout the pandemic. So, from bad things, some good things have emerged. And I think we are looking at a future of the world where we're going to be more cohesive, more aware, and we're going to have more experience systems with a greater focus on healthcare and rights and equality and equity. I hope that you've learned something today. I have certainly learned a lot by creating this presentation. Once again, thank you so much for inviting me. And now I open the floor for questions if you've got any.
Thank you very, very much, Christian, for your presentation. Thank you for being here. It's a very interesting talk, especially for students. We have hundreds of students here in the room, and a lot of them dream with being an international student. So this is very
Good.
interesting. I have one question for you. One of the beliefs that most people have is that now that COVID is somehow endemic, right? We're not on a pandemic anymore, and we are returning to some kind of normal, or that we are close to that kind of normal, some people believe. But the truth is that the world changed forever, and there are things that will not go back to the way they were before, right?
No.
What are those, in your opinion, main changes due to COVID in terms of migration and international student mobility that will stay forever, that will not go back to normal? What are those main changes that you think are going to last?
That they're going to stay as they are.
Right. That they're going to continue to be, but they changed due to COVID, right? But they're not going back the way they were before in
I
terms of
think
migration.
that's right. I think one of the things that is not going to change, and they're not going to go back as they were, is that awareness of the dependency that countries have in, for instance, international workers, right? The dependency that we have in international students, particularly in Australia. I think that mentality will never regress. You know, that's a new awareness, innovation, technology, the emphasis in sciences, for example, right? One of the things, though, that I wanted to say about international students that was very significant is that one of the experiences was that international students had to shift into online learning,
Right.
and I think that's one of the things that is going to
Mm,
return, as it were. I think students much prefer to have a campus and face-to-face class experience than online experience. And I think it was a measure that it was an emergency measure, but I think we're returning back to that. But I think the mentality, our collective
right.
awareness, right, it's something that is going to stay. I need to plug in my computer, just right there. I'm
Go
running out of
ahead.
battery.
No problem.
If anyone has got another question, I'm happy to
Yes.
respond.
It's okay. Professor Diana Milena Lopez, here from the faculty, wants to say, first of all, I would like to congratulate you for this excellent presentation. And second, I would like to know how difficult or easy it is for a Colombian professional to get the Australian permanent residency. How difficult would you say it is?
Okay, so when I this is the $1 million question, right? It's not difficult if you. Okay, I'm gonna be a little bit philosophical about this, right? Anyone that wants to come to Australia, Australia is a difficult country in which to secure permanent residence. Australia's got 22 million people, 23, and is the size of Canada. You know what I mean? It's huge, um, and it's got a very high standard of living. So the Australian government takes migration very, very, very serious, and it has done for the last 100 years. So migration law is very well developed in this country. Now, how difficult is it? It's not difficult if you take this as a life project. But if you think that you're gonna come here and next day you're gonna be a permanent resident, then you're gonna suffer emotionally and you're gonna be heartbroken because it's not like that. Migration is a system of points. So you are given points for your professional experience. You are given points for your qualification. You are given points for your English skills, written, writing, comprehension, etc. You are given points for your age, right? Unfortunately, you cannot apply for any skill visa, right, if you are over 45 years of age. So Australia is trying to attract people of certain age to come to Australia. But if you have $1 million, you definitely can come to Australia and buy a business and settle here with a business, right? But the system of migration in Australia is very sophisticated. But I can tell you, I work in the space of migration, and I can say that many people have achieved their permanent residence here. But if you are over 45 years of age, uh, yeah, it's going to be a little bit difficult unless you come under a different migration program. Uh, for that, you need advice. But it's
Okay.
possible, of course, everything's
So
possible.
I have so I have 6 years to decide whether to go to Australia to live or the
That's right.
Netherlands. I'm
Yeah,
trying to
6 years.
decide. I'm trying to
Yeah,
decide.
yeah. Well, but if you come, if you've got English, that's the thing. If you have good English, then that's half of the job. There's a lot of
Okay.
people that come here and they've been here for 2 years and they're very young. I'm talking about particularly about Colombian students. The medium age of the Colombians that are moving into a permanent visa sort of pathway is between 30 to 33. Some of them have been here for 6, 7 years, of which they study English, and it took them a long time to learn it
Mm.
because they keep gathering among themselves. You have to get out there and learn it, and the quicker you learn it, the quicker you can advance. It's
Got it.
crucial.
That's one of the
Makes
things we
sense.
try to. Right, it makes sense, and that's one of
Yeah,
the things we try to tell our students here from the beginning of their programs is the priority before your professional career as an international business management is English. Before the
absolutely.
career should be the priority. Muchas gracias, Cristian, por tu tiempo. Thank you very much for your ideas, for your presentation, for your time. Hay que tener en cuenta que en Australia ya son las 11:05 de la noche y es viernes, entonces Cristian realmente está
11:30.
sacrificando
11:30.
11:30, está sacrificando un tiempo que es muy valioso a nivel
It's okay.
personal para estar aquí
I'm a
con
lawyer.
nosotros, entonces, thank you.
Soy abogado. This is fine for me. I'm still working. There was another question, Andres. So what's
There
the level
was?
of English? There was one
Okay,
question from somebody.
okay.
I'm just gonna respond very quickly. If you guys wanna have a crack, there is something called the IELTS, which is the English test, and you can do it online. But a good English level is anything above 6, 6, 7, and 8, right? If you come to Australia and someone sponsors you to work in their business, then you don't need a level 6. You can have a level 5. But all that information is online. You just need to go to the Department of Home Affairs Australia, and you'll find a multitude of information.
Bien, muchas gracias, Cristian.
Thank you,
Esperamos en
everybody.
una futura oportunidad de pronto visitarte en Australia o quién
Of
quita que
course.
vengas por acá y nos veamos presencialmente. Que estés
Thank you
muy
very
bien.
much. Thank you.
Bien, finalizada esta primera conferencia de hoy, vamos a continuar ya un poquito encima del tiempo, pero nada grave, con la conferencia International Marketing in Post-Pandemic. Impact of Consumer Behavior and Sustainability on Strategic Planning, por parte del doctor Luis Camacho, que aceptó la invitación de participar en el Ciani 2022 desde Estados Unidos. Luis es académico, es investigador, es consultor y asesor empresarial, es examinador externo para los estudiantes de doctorado en el área de economía y gerencia de la Northwest University de South Africa. En el área de consultoría y asesoría empresarial, es presidente del Global Strategy Business Consulting, empresa de consultoría especializada en desarrollo organizacional, investigaciones de mercado, mercadeo internacional y proyectos de negocios internacionales. El doctor Luis Camacho ha sido profesor de varias universidades de la República Dominicana y de Estados Unidos, Creo que lo ha hecho merecedor de varios reconocimientos por su desempeño académico. Luis, bienvenido al Ciani 2022. Muchas gracias por aceptar nuestra invitación. Es un honor tenerte aquí, conocerte y escucharte.
Muchas gracias, Andrés. Also, I was born in the Dominican Republic. Um, I was told that my presentation, my talk should be in English, then that's what I'm going to do.
Amazing,
Thank you
perfect.
for inviting me for participating at Ciani 2022. This is my second time participating in this amazing event. I want to um, thank Dr. Gladys Valero, Professor Julio Ramirez, Professor Sarmiento, and all the team that gave me all the support in order to participate in this conference, and of course, in order to have everything settled, to share some ideas
Luis,
about, yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Are you sharing your screen or a presentation right now? No.
I will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. We can see it now. Thank you. Continue, please.
Then thanks everyone. This topic is interesting for international students, but this topic is very interesting for entrepreneurs, business people, and academians because we live in a special time around the world and around this age. International marketing in post-pandemic, how that pandemic has affected consumer behavior, and of course, strategic plans, not only for marketing, for businesses in general. But definitely, for me, it's very important to start this conversation with this thought. We are at the beginning of a revolution that is fundamentally a change in the way we live, work, and relate to each other. This is this is impacting for me. Everything has changed. We have to live in different ways now. The parameters that we had before have changed suddenly. But it is important to support what happened within the COVID pandemic and what's going on after the pandemic with some history, because we're living a revolution in different ways. And obviously, I have to start talking about the fourth industrial revolution. And I want to go to what revolution means. This term connotes drastic and sudden change. Drastic and sudden change. Throughout the history, revolutions have happened when new technology and unique ways of viewing the world precipitated radical shift in several ways: economic systems, social structures, health structures. This is one of the biggest points now. What happened with the world? We we were not prepared in order to accept or support or face what the COVID-19 brought and put into our place. Then that's revolution. Everything that changes, the normal system, the normal reality for something new. And then if we analyze the different revolutions, industrial revolutions, and I'm talking about this because we're living a integration of the fourth industrial revolution along with the fourth marketing revolution with the post-pandemic times. Then this is bigger than anything can thought 10, 15 years ago. This is more than simple elements to be considered, and obviously two elements that most push people to react. then the first industrial revolution that occurred between the 1760s and 1840s, it was basically a mechanical revolution. Mechanical manufacturing used at that time the development of the steam engine and the railroad. The dynamics, the economic dynamics at that time were um, impacted with those new elements. Um, then at that time, people and obviously the industry could start distributing products inside of the countries and in some points internationally. Then that was the biggest one. That was the biggest point in that first industrial revolution. But well, the second industrial revolution began at the late 19th century, and especially this revolution came with some mass manufacturing, and specifically the key element that revolutionized everything at that time was the electricity. We changed the steam engine for electricity, and then new machineries, new facilities for the people, for the industry was in place at that time. But well, the third revolution that was present around the 1960s brought something else. It was not something. It was not only uh, steam engine, railroad, electricity. No, it was more advanced. Then in 1960s, with the third industrial revolution, we had um, the computer the digital revolution that obviously allowed that the markets start using semiconductors, mainframe computers, personal computers around the 70s and 80s, and obviously the internet that was in place around the 90s. Then that third revolution was impacting. But now we're living the times of the fourth revolution. The fourth revolution, which is characterized by a fusion of technologies, and obviously technologies that must be supported by three mega trends: physical, digital, and biological. Then this is more than important, and we have to assume this in order to move forward and understand what's going on in our actual situation in the industry, marketing, international business, and strategic plans. And of course, we have to add the new components. What's going on with the COVID? What's going on with the changes in consumer behavior? What's going on with the new perception that consumers can um, assimilate in order to access products and services? This is huge, and we have to be prepared. Obviously, we have a lot of elements to consider. We live in the fourth industrial revolution, but definitely there's gaps that we have to close up. Emerging technologies and broad-based innovation are spreading far more rapidly and broadly than all other revolutions. Then the fourth revolution is walking fast, but 17% of the world has yet ultimately experienced a hazardous aspect of second industrial revolution. This means that 1.3 billion people just they don't have access to electricity yet. Then we're talking about the fourth revolution, which is based or supported by three mega trends: physical, digital, and biological. But we still have 1.3 billion people in our globalized world without electricity. But we have 4 billion people without internet access. And the fourth revolution is based on technology. Then there's a huge gap that we have to close up. That gap obviously imposes more problems, more specificity, or more specific variables that we have to understand, we have to research in order to provide products and services to different customers and segments based on what we're living now, the fourth evolution, but obviously with this huge gap, which is creating a lot of inequalities. So, well, I mentioned three mega trends. The first one, obviously, the physical mega trend. In this one, obviously, we're talking about autonomous vehicles. We're talking about 3D printing. We're talking about advanced robotics, and we're talking about new materials, basically. Four main elements that support physical, that physical mega trend inside of the fourth industrial revolution. But my question is, emerging economies, developing countries, are they prepared? Because this type of conferences um, must give something extra to the students, to faculty, to business people, if we have business people in this talk today, because we have to do something. We want to compete globally with companies from different advanced countries, but well, are we prepared? Do we have the potential and facilities to analyze what's going on with this first mega trend, physical mega trend? Talking about, um, I'm going to use this as an example. Amazon is delivering products in the United States using drones. Are we prepared in Latin America or developing countries to start delivering this type of products or products in this way? Then those are things that we have to understand. But the second mega trend inside of the fourth industrial revolution, digital. And obviously, when I mention the digital mega trend, I'm talking about the Internet of the Things, well known as Internet of All Things. Then, if we have this as the second um, impact variable inside of the fourth industrial revolution, and we have 4 billion people without internet access, or they cannot access internet, then we have another problem. And the third mega trend, of course, it is the biological mega trend. Then innovations in the biological realm um, are nothing less than breathtaking. Then we're talking about genetics, we're talking about nanotechnology, but are those new? No. When I studied in Taiwan in 2002 at the China Institute of the, 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 the Textile Institute of China, they were working with nanotechnology applied to the filaments in order to have the yarn and then the fabric. Then is this new? No, it is not new. Those are things that we have to start working with now, because we are living in a world which is changing, and the biggest impact, along with what's going on with the post-pandemic, is that we don't have the same consumer. Customers are different. And instead of trying to create a market segmentation process as the way we used to, now we have to create social little groups of customers that will react and demand product and services based on their own parameters. Then this is different. And obviously, if we are in marketing and we don't want to start using data data metrics and measuring what's going on with in our markets based on scientific analysis, we're lost. We cannot have customers that are already participating in technology and deciding all products and services based on technology and information that they have gathered through technology, developing strategic marketing plans without sense. No, no, no. This is different. Everything is different. Then that's why we have this, the revolution of marketing in history, which is something similar of what's going on with the fourth industrial revolution. In the first marketing revolution, obviously, we were focused on product-centric marketing. And if we can recall the different marketing philosophies that were stated by Kotler, and then some of the authors reproduced. But well, essentially, product orientation, production orientation, market orientation, societal marketing orientation. Well, that's good. But well, at that time, the first revolution in terms of marketing, the marketing 1.0, well, we were centered only and uniquely in product. We wanted to have a good product, a decent product. But definitely the history and the industrial revolution impacted that marketing 1.0, because we were centered in the product, because we were living in an era in which markets were devastated and people couldn't have access to product and services in order to solve their initial needs. And I'm talking about the beginning of 20th century, in which the ideas and researches that Taylor Fayol were in place, in which productivity was the main issue. We wanted to produce more. We want more products. Then it's not enough improving or increasing production. We need to improve our products because we want to compete. Then that was marketing 1.0. But marketing 2.0 was consumer-centric marketing. And then we're talking about the 60s, in which not only producing was enough. Then at that time, after the Second World War, and the advent of the baby boomers, right after the 1945, and then the baby busters, they were demanding specific products, specific services. Why? Because industrialization was in place. We had more products in our distribution channels. Then it's not enough to have bread. No, no. I want French bread. I don't want that sweet bread that I have to buy because there's nothing else. No, no, no. I want French bread. And that's why at that time, marketing 2.0, we were centered in consumers. But what marketing 3.0, it's a marketing oriented to creation of value. Then creating value means that it's not enough to access a product. It's not enough to have some diversity of products. How that product can be an interpretation of my own expectation as individual, as member of a society, and of course, as a human being which is projecting a new lifestyle. And along with this, customers, it doesn't matter that we're talking about the B2C marketing aspect or the B2B marketing aspect, obviously are increasingly at the center of a digital economy that they get fully involved in everything, in all decisions related to the product, to the service, and satisfactors. Satisfactors means products or services that fully satisfy a need that someone is exhibiting, but definitely it's a need that goes along with the product or service and all those individual and social components that must be in place in that. And we're not selling products anymore. Long time ago, no, we are selling satisfactors. One of the things that I used to discuss with my students was we don't sell screwdrivers. No, or we don't sell a car. No, we are selling something that is a solution for transportation. It doesn't matter that the car could be luxury or not, but initially this is the aim. What is the problem? Then am I going to um, um, give a solution to my customers? This is something. But well, the marketing 4.0 it's something totally different that we're talking about combining online and offline interaction definitely between business and customers. And this is why we have this, the revolution of the marketing mix. Marketing 1.0, we had promotion, we had distribution, we had price, and we had product. When we jumped from marketing 1.0 to marketing 2.0 slash 3.0, instead of promotion, we had communication. We had to start communicating appropriately to our customers, our products, services, and security in terms of a product I'm trying to sell. The unique selling proposition was in place at that time. And of course, instead of distribution from 1.0, when we jumped to 3.0, we were talking about convenience. It's not only that I'm going to distribute the product. No, 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 no. You have to provide to your customers at that time convenience. Where's the best place to get it? Then at that time, obviously, we started seeing in the market um, Eddie Bauer, Victoria's Secret, that created a disruptive distribution system that based on catalogs, people could buy things and they use the normal traditional um, mailing service, and then you could receive uh, your products exactly in that way. But well, it was the same when I remember when I used the first time the SPSS software. SPSS is a social software. It's a statistical software that we use for researching. When I had to install the first one I used, I had 16 floppy disks. I don't know if you guys, the new students, that if you recall or if you have seen what is a floppy disk. Uh, it was something similar to a USB pen, but well, we had nothing at that time. Now you don't have to do that anymore because if you want to access, if you want to buy the one of those softwares, well, you just have to download it, and that's it. Usually I had to take like 3 hours in order to install appropriately the software. Now in 10 minutes you got everything on place and you can start working with. Then convenience, cost of customers instead of price, and consumer solutions, exactly what I was saying, instead of products. But the marketing 4.0 is different here, which is the most important component in this new conceptualization of marketing, is co-creation. The customer is fully involved in the decisions when buying a product. They want to be involved in that process. They want to say, no, I don't want this color, I want this color. I don't want that performance, I want this performance. And of course, when in marketing 1.0, we were talking about price. Now we're talking about foreign exchange because we are selling products globally. That's what globalization means. And something that brought the pandemic was this. And obviously, instead of distribution, community activation, and instead of promotion, conversation, because we do need a one-to-one conversation with our customers. Then, obviously, everything changed. Then, and I'm going to mention specifically this point here. We have to rethink marketing from the consumer perspective. We have consumer 4.0, which are humans. In terms of marketing, we have superhuman. We have to exhibit humanism because we really need individuals that you can establish a conversation. But in terms of business decision, robotics, chatbox is nothing that you can put away now. It's something that must be in place. But well, this obviously imposes different ways to analyze the business model. When we were living in marketing 1.0, we had a mono channel, which was a shop, a store. 2.0 shop and web shop. Today, 3.0 omni-channel, shop, web shop, a mobile sales. But marketing 4.0, we have the eco-intelligence system, which means user central. We have to sell to everyone. We must be just in time. And obviously, situational relevance is very important because people are fully involved in our decisions. Then, in terms of business, this is what we're talking about, especially in times in post-pandemic times. We're living a business model disruption leads to the disappearance of linear value change and the introduction of value network. The producer can now deliver value to the consumer by letting go of the ownership of production and enabling, of course, the consumer to produce. This enabling will require definitely key partnerships in the business model that will supply materials, not to the producer, but directly to the client. And also, it may involve lining up innovation agents like people on their own, people co-innovating with intelligent machines, and on. Then we are living a fully disruptive moment in the industry, in businesses, and of course, in marketing. And all that innovation is supported by these 10 industrial marketing technologies that will support our new reality. Technologies that change the physical world, meaning biotechnology, robotics, 3D printing, new materials, Internet of Things, energy capture, storage, and transmission, and technologies that change the digital world, meaning artificial intelligence, blockchain applications, new computational technologies, and virtual and augmented reality. That's a big panorama, a huge panorama. And then with all the things, we have this, the COVID. And now let us talk about the COVID. And let me briefly present some statistics about the COVID and Colombia. Most Colombians are unsure about their country's economic future. And this is COVID, and something that we have to consider. More than two-thirds of Colombians feel job insecurity as a result of COVID-19 and are cutting back on their spending. Three, more than three-fourths of consumers expect a reduction in their income and savings, so almost half plan to increase spending. And this is in Colombia. Colombians expect to decrease spending across categories, different categories, than especially or with the exception of groceries, entertainment, supplies, and personal care. Colombians expect to increase online spending on at-home entertainment and food takeout and delivery. Colombians expect to increase time spent on visual and social media as well as news. And Colombians have picked up new digital activities since the start of COVID-19, including busy remote learning and TikTok. This is what we have now after the pandemics. Then if we put together everything I was saying about the industrial revolutions and the revolutions inside of the marketing field, the COVID and how the individual have changed, this is what we have. We have a new normal. Then the coronavirus is not only a health crisis of immense proportion, it is also an imminent restructuring of the world economic order. This is what we're living. And of course, the impact in consumers is amazing. Then we have behavioral changes, as exactly what I was saying, changes in spending, general anxiety, depression, fear for COVID, and then the monkeypox, perception of economic stability, perception of health stability. Those are changes inside of our customers. Ethnocentric consumer, well, this is something that arose not only with COVID, but obviously increased significantly. Some countries promoted buy locally, and this is what this means, ethnocentric consumers. Then preferences for local products, nationalism, denial of imported products, and on, but also along with the ethnocentric, we have segnocentric. Then we had the opportunity to decide where to go and from whom. Then we now have something which is biggest that was amplified after the COVID. We have a global identity, preference for different societies, preferences for imported products, global comparison, we have that now, and aversion for the local. And obviously, we put a lot of attention from the country of origin. What was the place, what was the country that manufactured this product? And then, obviously, two elements that affected consumer behavior are this one. One, ethnocentrism, which has been promoted in some countries, specifically trying to improve the local economy and block in one way or another imports and foreign products. But the technology gave to the consumers the power of decide. Then ethnocentrism at the same time arose significantly, and then consumers were deciding what product is better, from whom they can access the service or buy the product, and obviously what is quality in terms of decision-making process. Obviously, this is the new paradigm in strategic marketing, and COVID-19 caused consumers to be more exposed to goods from other countries with economic, cultural, political orientations, different, of course, from their local markets, and definitely the consciousness of modern global society can explain the relationship between technocentrism and consumption that fulfill all consumers' needs, including specific preferences related to environmental protection. Then this means that we have all those elements that support the new paradigm in strategic marketing. We have technology that we live with every day. We have e-commerce that have arose and have established a new way to decide what product or service is the best one. We will have customers that they have the power of decide what to get, and obviously online shopping helps to establish customers and supplier relationships more intensively than we were talking about. um, Conversation, a one-to-one conversation instead of communication. Definitely some definitions that if um, if the conference is going to share these slides with the participants, that would be the best. I just wanted to highlight a couple of definitions about ethnocentrism and a couple of definitions about technocentrism. Those um, important constructs that in academia must be researched at this time, because definitely we're living a new era, and in international business, international marketing, everything has changed. Then this matrix in which we had to decide for global integration and local response must be in depth um, must be studied in depth details for all individuals participating in business and marketing. Then definitely the 10 truths about marketing after the pandemics. This is very important. One, well, the variables, customers, competition, product services, porting on customers and marketing strategies. The old truth, marketing begins with knowing your customers. For competition, you are competing with your competitors. For products and services, customers hope you have what they want. For quoting customers is just like dating. And for marketing strategy, customers must sit at the heart of the marketing strategy. But the new truth is this one: marketing begins with knowing your customer segment. You are a you are competing with the last best experience your customer had. It's not with the other which is doing the same thing. You have to analyze definitely the consumer behavior structure and how the experience could affect the mind of your customers, because you're not competing with the one across the street which is doing the same thing with you. Is what the client has in that mind, probably affecting the new decision making process. Customers expect you to have exactly what they want. Courting customers is just like online dating. And in terms of marketing strategy, customers must sit at the heart of your customer's journey. And the five next truths: the variables relationship, speed, brand, technology, and growth. Well, the old one, relationship matters. Agility is a technology process. Your brand should stand behind great products. Right tech stack to drive modern marketing success. And the growth, in terms of growing, marketing is important for growth. Well, the new one is relationships are everything. More than ever, you have to create tight relationship with your customers. Agility is not a modern marketing approach. That's not agility anymore. Your brand should stand behind great values, right balance of factors to drive modern marketing success. In terms of technology, technology is not having a software. It's using a integrated technological approach that will serve in better way to your customers. And marketing is at the center of the growth agenda for full C-suite. Companies that most respond to the post-pandemic challenges, well, virtualization must be in place, availability all the times, integration with the customers and the whole supply chain management process. Stability gives an extra to that relationship. Positioning, but not positioning based on a couple of variables in a perceptual map. Positioning means analyzing specifically that social small group in which probably through technology your clients, your customers are participating. Differentiation must be in place more than ever. Knowledge, because you have to keep researching the market, flexibility at all the times, and innovation and safety for the customers. In simple words, the future of marketing after the pandemics, the consumer experience is more than important, more than ever. We have to have and we have to use artificial intelligence. We have to be involved not only with the chat box, but well, everything with technological, with everything that could be supported by technology, but increase your relationship with your customers and data, data more than ever. Those that believe creating a strategic marketing plan, it's simple. Now, it was not simple, but now it's more difficult because you have to use micro segmentation processes through technology. And definitely final ideas before I end. I can end this talk. For those who didn't know, the information age is long over. We're living something else. We're living something else. We're living technology. We're living the fourth industrial revolution era, which is not only information age. A shift from the institutional to the individual has materialized, then you have to have individualistic approaches to your customers. Every day more, artificial intelligence is less artificial because we have to use it. We have to practice it. Digital natives are filling the world and, well, the new generations, especially the Z generation. The Z generation, it's demanding different things. And they're growing. Well, it's a natural path for sustainability. They're growing, but they realize the life and the business practices differently. We move from selling to sharing, especially if we go back to the slide in which I was explaining the new business models. Instead of selling, we are sharing. And we are sharing the responsibility of manufacturing the product because we want to reduce as much as possible the cognitive dissonance processes. That psychological process that affect consistently and intensively the new decision-making process among your customers. Thinking that consumers buy the local is only a myth. It's not. That's why those two constructs must be researched for in academia, ethnocentrism and technocentrism, because definitely for some products, categories and services categories, technocentrism, it's more than important. Why do you guys are thinking in going abroad to study? That's technocentrism, a sort of technocentrism. We could have more technocentric customers than ethnocentric soon if we do not adopt our business strategies and products. Definitely, because The new generations are deciding where to buy and from whom just with a click. And then we cannot allow that. We have to create new frameworks that can work and can be suitable with the decision-making process with our segments. And the biggest question, are we prepared for the next pandemic? Because everything has changed, but well, are we prepared for that? Is that real? If we are not, obviously, this thought for one which created innovation and lived based on innovation is very good for all of you. Imagination is more important than knowledge. And then that's the key to be successful because we have to innovate based on imagination, trying to discover the path, the path, the real path that creates synergy with your customers, clients, competitors, the society as whole. That's the new marketing panorama. We are not alone. We have to work tight with all stakeholders, including your competitors. Because as I said, your competition is inside of your customer's mind.
Right.
Thank you very much for allowing me to share my ideas with you. Now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Camacho, for this presentation. Those are very interesting and recent ideas, I would say. I'm very sure there are a lot of questions because our students like marketing, especially over other topics. Si quieren hacer preguntas en español, pueden hacerlas, pero los invitamos a que la pregunta y que hagan el esfuerzo de hacer las preguntas en inglés, ¿vale? Pero de nuevo, si no se sienten en la comodidad, bienvenidas preguntas en español, podemos conversar también en español. Are there any questions? Yo veo una pregunta aquí de Nelson Valbuena que está escrita desde hace un buen tiempo, desde las 9:24, dice, Society considers that we already enter into an era of AI, and this will definitely change the jobs of humanity and the methods of consumption due to a higher unemployment. So AI would generate a higher unemployment. How to accept the way these kind of changes will affect us without being as much affected as the society could be auto-destroyed? What's your opinion on that?
That's a great question. And as a matter of fact, a colleague from FIU researched about that specific question. Well, it is our responsibility as business owners to continue um, promoting and increasing the business activities. I do not trust in those business people that want to use technology in order to cut down employability. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we have to integrate technology in order to give more facility to our customers without affecting the society, without affecting our stakeholders in general. Obviously, technology pushes um, decision makers to start thinking in, well, if I use this technology, I can reduce my employees, and then I will be more profitable. This is not the point, because definitely all decisions we make must be tied to business ethics. Business ethics, the aim of business ethics is protecting stakeholders that are surrounding um, a, um, a business. Then definitely I do not trust in that. I don't trust that we have to use technology to cut down employability. But definitely there's something else. The new panorama, the new era implies that people must accept that the only way to be auto-sustainable is based on knowledge. If you go to any why I was saying that we have a huge gap to close up, because developing countries and emerging countries are they want to be in this new era, but definitely they have a lot of things to do. And it's not only business people that must do it. Michael Porter said in that beautiful research that integrated the country and everyone else, that the diamond or the perfect triangle is academia, the government, and business people. All of them working together in order to exhibit and give to the population more opportunities. But obviously, those opportunities must be based on knowledge. If we are talking about that we live in the technological era, this means that we need knowledge in order to move forward. For people that don't want to understand this, well, life could be a little bit difficult and they will have less opportunities. For people like you guys that are participating in this forum, life could be totally different. I don't know if I did answer the question.
Thank you very much, Luis. We have a couple of more questions in the chat. First, maybe you can speak a little bit about the relationship or the interaction between marketing and blockchain. And then Isabel Ruiz says, can you explain what is going on with the free products nowadays? How do they work and why could it be a good strategy? Why and how free samples end up costing money?
Well, blockchains, it's an application, it's a technological application, as well as chatbot that is going to be useful depending on the business strategies and dependable how dependent a business could be from those applications. One of the things that I try to say to my clients when I'm doing consulting activities is this: if you don't know, or if you don't have a clear idea about how to use this technological application, please don't waste your money. That's good. Blockchains are perfect, as well as developing a online structure. But well, do you have the structure? Do you have the systems that initiates inside of the corporation? If you don't have people specialized in blockchain, or people specialized in managing, controlling, and measuring the effects of blockchain or any other application, then you're doing nothing. Technology is there, but well, the biggest decision for business owners, especially those participating in the small, medium um, businesses, it's which is the best application for me based on technology that is going to create that intense relationship with my consumers. Free products is a promotional strategy. Um, if that's the question. Obviously, everything you give to the people for free has a cost. Then, in terms of the marketing plan or the strategic marketing plan, you have to analyze how much product could be included in the marketing budget in order to be successful, and measure using regression lines and using statistics, measure obviously the effect of those products that you give up to the people, that you give to the people, and your sales, if that's what you're trying to measure, or the growth of your business. I think if that was the question.
Ok, thank you very much, Luis. Muchas gracias por tu tiempo, por tus ideas. No tenemos más tiempo para preguntas. Muchas gracias por haber aceptado nuestra invitación y esperamos que en una futura oportunidad de pronto nos podamos encontrar presencialmente, ya sea visitándote allá o que de pronto te pases por acá por Colombia.
Con mucho gusto, gracias por invitarme. Para mí es un honor participar con ustedes en esta conferencia. Al final de la presentación tenía un slide que tenía mi correo electrónico
Ujú.
para aquellos que de una manera u otra quisieran que habláramos de estos temas o tengan alguna pregunta, pues con mucho gusto, con muchísimo gusto, estaría abierto y disponible para responderle. Gracias, les deseo que tengan un feliz término, como siempre ha sido, de Ciani 2022. Muchos éxitos, muchos éxitos.
Muchas gracias de nuevo, doctor Luis. Bien, a continuación vamos a ir a un descanso de unos 10 minutos. Aprovechamos para contarles lo siguiente. Tenemos una encuesta, un formato de encuesta a través del cual queremos conocer su opinión sobre el Congreso. Para nosotros es muy importante conocer la opinión de todos los participantes sobre este Congreso, sobre la calidad de las conferencias, de los conferencistas, sobre la dinámica logística. Entonces vamos a estar compartiendo por el chat de la llamada un enlace para esa opinión. Ahora, obviamente sería también conveniente que esperáramos por la tarde a que lo diligencien, pero de todas maneras pueden ir conociendo el formato, viéndolo, pensando en esa evaluación y ya por la tarde podemos diligenciarlo. También pueden diligenciarlo de una vez, por supuesto. Bien, estamos teniendo un pequeño inconveniente. La presentación de nuestro anterior conferencista se quedó como congelada ahí en la pantalla principal, pero él ya no está en la reunión y tampoco está compartiendo pantalla. Entonces estamos intentando resolver ese problemita. Pero pues tenemos estos 10 minuticos para tomarnos un break, tómense un cafecito, estiren un poco y volvemos para continuar con la charla perdón, con las ponencias simultáneas. Entonces a las 10:15 vamos a comenzar las ponencias simultáneas en las diferentes salas individuales. Nos vemos en un rato.
Andrés.
Sí.
Hola, buen día, ¿cómo estás?
Adelante, Pau. El problema es que cuando nadie está compartiendo nada, se ve la presentación que tenía Cristian.
Correcto.
La única forma de que no se vea la presentación que tenía Cristian es que alguien esté compartiendo pantalla. ¿Y por qué queremos que eso se arregle? Porque la idea es que uno pueda ver la pantalla completa cuando la persona ya no está compartiendo, sino que se ve la persona solamente. Sería bueno poder solucionarlo. No sé cómo hagamos.
Ok, es decir, en este momento está
Sí.
mirando la presentación que yo tengo.
Correcto, estamos viendo su pantalla. Si usted deja de compartir, aparece de nuevo la presentación que estaba compartiendo inicialmente Cristian en la mañana. Y yo no sé por qué aparece eso, si nadie está compartiendo pantalla.
Entiendo. Y Cristian ya salió de la reunión,
Cristian
¿cierto?
ya salió de la reunión, sí. Lo interesante, Mauricio, es que yo puedo controlar, o uno puede controlar ahí arribita, el paso de la presentación. Ahí me muestra ahí las diapositivas y yo me puedo mover hacia la derecha y hacia la izquierda en la presentación, como si yo tuviera control de esa presentación.
Andrés, buenos días. Le habla Manuel Pérez.
Sí.
¿Cómo le va?
Hola,
Yo
Manuel.
también tengo la presentación ahora a las 10:55 de la mañana.
Sí.
Y yo quisiera saber por dónde debo subir la presentación. Donde dice compartir, ahí donde dice compartir se comparte toda la pantalla mía, ¿cierto?
Sí, señor.
Correcto,
Ok,
la idea es que la idea es que la compartas compartiendo tu pantalla.
ok.
Andrés, buenos días al
Dime.
ponente que está hablando. Quería mencionarle que usted debe darle compartir es en la sala pequeña que le corresponde, en la sesión de grupos. ¿Tiene claro cómo entrar a la sesión de grupos?
No, no,
Voy a
Paola.
habilitarlas en
Entonces,
este momento.
sí,
Bueno, pero
permítame, vamos a habilitarla y voy a proyectar mi pantalla
A
para
donde dice
explicarle.
no,
sesiones
no, no,
de
pero
subgrupos, algo así.
sí, correcto. Pero eso
Ok,
lo podemos mirar a
Correcto.
las 10, eso lo podemos mirar a las 10:15. Ahora la prioridad es arreglar el problema de la presentación que se está compartiendo ahí de Cristian. Si quieres, a las 10:15 que volvamos para las salas simultáneas, podemos mirar lo de cómo entrar a esas salas, ¿vale?
listo.
Andrés,
Sí,
¿me recuerdas el nombre completo de Cristian, de la persona que estaba ahorita?
sí, estaba Cristian
Cristian Cifuentes.
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 Cifuentes. Él de alguna manera puso a compartir esa presentación y quedó como congelada ahí No sé por qué.
En este momento, ¿quién está compartiendo?
El doctor Luis Vaquero.
Doctor, ¿será que nos desconectas un momento la compartida mientras hacemos unas pruebas y ya te habilito nuevamente?
En este momento voy a cancelar la grabación.
Perfecto.
Perdón, estaba practicando, era.